Hi, everyone. Thanks for attending another GoDaddy Pro webinar, or if this is your first one, welcome. We're glad to have you. I'm Angela with GoDaddy Pro, and I'm going to be your host. You might also see me in the chat. You'll just see Angela Blake. So if I'm answering you in chat, you can talk to me. I'm not a robot. I'm a real person, I swear. We also have Nealey back again for another webinar with us. We love having him. So I'm going to let him introduce himself here in a few minutes and tell you a little bit more about his topic. And then he's just going to kind of take over the screen and give his presentation. Afterward, we'll have our Q&A, and we'll go through and answer your questions after the fact. We might, if there's something that comes up that's kind of immediate, we might give that a shout out and answer that. But go ahead and just drop them in the little Q&A spot there at the bottom of your screen, and we will definitely get to those. So before we get started with all of that, go ahead and do our traditional shameless plug. Drop a URL in the chat. It can be your website, a website you're working on, Twitter handle, like anything you really want to call attention to just to introduce yourself so we can know who's here and how to, interact with you. While you're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and talk about Chorba a little bit. Usually you will see him on screen with us, but today he's not going to be on screen. He's just going to be in chat. He is the person who runs our GoDaddy Pro Twitter handle. So that's where you're going to be able to find like notifications for any of our upcoming virtual events, the webinars, meetups, socials, anything like that. He will share those on the GoDaddy Pro Twitter handle. So if you're interested in keeping up to date with things that we're talking about and events that we're holding, go ahead and follow him there, and he will definitely keep you up to date with that. So now that we've gotten through all of that, I'm going to go ahead and pass the torch to Nealey here. If you want to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what you're going to be going over today.
I would absolutely love to. So we're talking about how to choose the right hosting plan for your business model. Before that, I mean, if you've attended any webinars before, I might be a friendly face, but a little bit about me. So I've been helping small businesses get online for about 8 years. Really started at GoDaddy as just a care guide on the phones and the trenches, helping either support our products or sell them and make sure that the right fit. About the same time I started at GoDaddy, I started building out my own WordPress sites and started a couple side hustles around there, and still going strong with building out websites. I'm now a project manager for our partners' customer and product excellence team, essentially making sure that the entire experience for our partners, which is our web designers and developers, is excellent, if you will. I'm a co-host of GoDaddy's YouTube show, The Journey. If you have not checked that out, I highly recommend. There's lots of actionable tips to really help small businesses. It's not necessarily focused around GoDaddy specifically. It's just focused around how to help you with your business. And then, as always, you can find me on Twitter at Justin Nealey. Love to chat and answer all of your questions. But my goal for this webinar is pretty simple. It's really just to help you determine the best solution for your hosting needs. Now, we have a lot of hosting options out there available, and sometimes it can get a little bit overwhelming figuring out what is the right hosting for you. Before we really get started though, I'd love to know, I go ahead and just post it in the chat below there, but do you host clients' sites in your own account, or do you let them manage in their account? Just go ahead and give it a little chat there. Just put my account or client's account really quick. Me personally, I host them in my client's account, but everyone's got their own preference there. Cool. So let's talk about all of the website hosting solutions that are available. So when we look at all of the different options, there's quite a bit. So starting with the websites plus marketing, managed WordPress and managed WordPress Pro, we've got our shared hostings with cPanel and Plesk. We've got our business hosting, we have VPS, and we have dedicated servers. Some of these are not always one size fits all. There's a lot of different use cases when it comes to hosting your clients' websites. But there's almost never a wrong answer. A lot of these things can fit with most situations. But when we look at the spectrum here, on the very left, we've got really the low tech skills needed, minimum platform flexibility, but you can get sites up and running pretty quickly. And then on the very right-hand side, we have basically the high tech skills needed, high platform flexibilities, but it's going to take a lot of work. And then lower on the tier side, it's more the large site and high traffic. And I'm really going to break down each one of these to help really understand what they're all about, what the best use cases are for either your website or for your clients' websites too, depending on what you used to build it and things like that. So before deciding which hosting is the right hosting, you'll need to decide where your clients' websites will be hosted. This is going to determine what plans you set them on, and especially what tier of those types of hosting plans to fit on. I asked you all earlier in this webinar, where does it make sense, or where do you host your clients' websites? Let's talk about where it makes sense, and we'll go through a couple of the pros and cons of each. So hosting it in your account, so you manage all aspects of their online presence. So it's a good idea to host it in your account. You maybe provide a white glove maintenance and hosting package kind of built all together. You kind of get all of the profits because you're just selling off little parts of your hosting plan. The client maybe isn't tech savvy enough to manage the hosting in their account. So you just do it for them just because it's just a little bit easier, right? But with hosting it in your account, you become the first line of all tech support. So if their hosting goes down or the website goes down for whatever reason, you might get a call at 3 a.m. saying, hey, my hosting's down. What is going on? So if that's not something that you're wanting to do, then maybe not want to post it in your account. And there are potential legal liabilities like loss of data and things like that if you're managing that you may want to look into. But looking at hosting it in your client's account, so the client still contains ownership of their entire website, but you can still manage it through GoDaddy Pro without having to have their usernames and passwords. You just log in through GoDaddy Pro, click their account inside of the Pro dashboard, and then you can manage it as you're basically logged in as them in their account. But you want your client to be responsible for the billing, so you want them to maintain all of that aspect. That's just not something that you want to take care of. Because you still provide maintenance services with these websites, but the hosting is managed there. So I like to put it in my client's account because I get to focus on what I do best and leave hosting and manage it and the frontline tech support to the experts, because I may not be the expert and I don't have the time to do all those nitty gritty tasks when there's most hosting companies, whether you choose GoDaddy or someone else, can essentially help provide some of those services for you. So breaking down the different types of hosting options available, we're going to start with the absolute easiest. So as a website designer and developer, typically our first instinct, at least nowadays, right, is to build the site using WordPress. While WordPress is my favorite solution, sometimes it's not always the best solution. So I like to say this is the easiest way to get a great website online with built-in marketing solutions for your clients. So it has a ton of value baked into it. So you get to connect online reviews, social media activity, get industry-specific recommendations for your client. There's built-in email marketing, SEO wizards, social media integration, Google My Business integration, and a lot more baked into the plan that you can help set up and manage for your client. So you essentially do more service than just manage the website itself. But it really is great for customers or clients that need a simple website, but with a lot of added value on the back end. So they don't need anything like super advanced or super custom. They just want something that looks professional, great on every device, but those couple extra little features are nice to have. This is a fantastic solution that I've set up quite a few of my own web design clients on, just because they didn't need anything too crazy, but they like some of the membership options and a lot of the social media integration baked right in. And they can go in and manage the site when I'm done with the initial design themselves, because it's easy enough for them to go in and click and point and update the text or images and things like that. But you do want to avoid this if your client is looking for advanced feature, or if they want something incredibly custom. With website builders, whether it's at GoDaddy or another provider, have limitations at some point. So if you have a client that's super nitpicky or super just wants the world of their website, this might not be the best solution for you. But again, great for those customers that need something super fast or pretty straightforward, but with that professional design. And then moving on to one of my favorite hosting platforms, we've got managed WordPress. So this makes sense if you're building your site or even your client site with WordPress, sorry. So there's tons of baked-in features that makes it nice for me as a website designer when it comes to managing my client's site. So there's things like built-in 90-day backups, so I make sure my client sites are secure with those backups. With our ultimate plan, there's a website security essentials that you can set up so that it basically sets up malware removal. There's staging sites, so I can make a clone of the site, make all my updates, and then push those live. We have a fantastic template gallery to really kickstart the design of the client, but lots of great features built in. And when it comes down to where you're going to be hosting your client site, we have a bunch of individual website plans. So we have our basic, deluxe, and ultimate, and e-commerce that host one website. And we have our pro pack, if I can talk, that go from the 5, 10, 25, and 50 slots if you're hosting and managing it in your own account. So whatever makes sense for you, we have both those options. And now if your client wants to set up some sort of online store, we've actually partnered with Automatic, basically WooCommerce, to provide a bunch of e-commerce plugins baked into the plan itself. So if you want things like bookings or shipping rates and all sorts of other stuff, I think the total is a little over $3,000 worth of plugins. Typically what I see most customers, or what most of my clients use, is around 5 to 8 plugins. But even at that value of what they're setting up, it's about $400 to $800 depending on the plugins they end up using. So it's incredible value if they're going with that e-commerce route. And it just makes life easier for you as a designer, because that's one less plugin that you have to go out and shop for or look for. It's all baked in right, nice and easy. With the managed WordPress plan, obviously you want to avoid this plan for your clients if you're not building the website in WordPress. I think it goes without saying, but I have seen some customers set up managed WordPress only to delete everything in the directory and upload their HTML files. It just didn't make sense to me, but I have seen people do that. A couple other things with managed WordPress. So there are baked in features like the caching and CDN. So if you have a preference on, like, I have to use this caching plugin or I have to use this CDN provider, that's baked into the managed WordPress plan. So it may not be the best fit for you, but we have other options. But again, great for you if you're building a WordPress site for yourself or for your clients. You want those added features. Another great benefit of this plan, especially for you as a designer, if you want to start offering some types of maintenance type services, you get all of our GoDaddy Pro features for free. So these are the things like the premium backups, the SEO reports, the linking, all the stuff inside of Pro sites. And I hope that Shorba can link you guys over there in the chat. But all of those get baked right in, absolutely free, which is pretty cool. You just check the chat, make sure there's nothing else I need. Cool. All right, moving on. Moving on from managed WordPress, we have cPanel shared hosting. So I like to think of this hosting plan as the Swiss Army knife of hosting. At the Swiss Army knife, you've got the knife, you got the screwdriver, you have the can opener. It's got all the tools that you need if you ever go camping or out in the wild, right? Same thing with cPanel hosting. You can do a little bit of everything with this hosting plans. So you can still host WordPress on here if that's your jam. You're super familiar with cPanel, but you have Installatron, which has like a one-click installer of a ton of popular applications that you can use. So there's things like Magento, Drupal, Joomla, there's PHP BB. You can set up wikis with this. There's all sorts of stuff that you can use. But it's great for websites that you need a little bit more flexibility or more control over its environment. And you don't want to be restricted by things like blacklisted plugins or using your own caching plugins or using your own CDNs and things like that. It does mean that you'll have to set up a little bit more to do so, since it's not automatically baked in, like no backups. But there are definitely options out there for you to get those set up. So you want to kind of avoid this one though. If you're going to be hosting all of your clients' websites, it's not a great idea to put them on the shared hosting environment. For cPanel, it's good for maybe like 5 to 10, but as you kind of grow, you'll start to notice your resources will get eaten up by your websites. Now, if they're all pretty static HTML sites, it's not gonna be a big issue, but as you put on WordPress sites or even especially Magento, you're definitely wanna move on to other solutions, but we'll get to that. But it's also not great for heavy resourced websites. So if you do plan on hosting Magento, while this does support it to an extent, you'll have a much better experience for yourself or your client with some of our other offerings. All right, and then we have, moving on from our cPanel shared hosting, which is on our Linux environment, we have our Plesk shared hosting, which is on our Windows-based environment. Now, one thing that happens all the time, I'll tell you from experience, I did it myself. So we have a Windows computer, right? We think, cool, I need Windows hosting. That is not the case. When I first started my website career, even right before I started GoDaddy, I had a Mac at the time. So I'm like, Mac is Unix based, so I need Linux, right? So that just makes sense. That was my reasoning behind it. The operating system on your computer has no jurisdiction over the type of hosting that you should get. Typically, when it comes to Windows hosting, it's great for ASP and .NET websites or websites that use Microsoft SQL Server. It does have the ability to host almost anything else. So you can host WordPress sites on here, Joomla, whatever you might want to do. But I typically recommend sticking with cPanel shared hosting if you're not building a website in ASP, .NET, or MS SQL. If you are, Plesk Shared hosting. If you're not, stick with Windows. And then the business hosting. So I really like this hosting options for if you're going to be hosting a bunch of websites or have really heavy resource intensive type of websites. So this is like having the power of a virtual private server with the ease of managing shared hosting. So it goes all the way up to, I believe, 32 gigabytes of RAM, I believe, or 64. I need to double check that. But you get a ton of power with these hosting solutions. So if you're doing these for your clients, so these are great for medium to enterprise level businesses or established businesses that need the resource to power their large, high functioning websites. And it's good for you if you're going to be managing a lot of your clients' websites in one little platform. You do want to avoid, even though it has the power of a VPS, you don't have the access of a VPS. You don't have root level access more specifically. So you can't do things like open different ports and running custom software. So if you want to do anything like that, if your client needs anything super fancy that you need to modify server level details, you want to stay away from any of the plans that I've talked about so far. Then we have reseller hosting. So this is one that is a little bit newer to our lineup. So if you are going to be selling hosting off to your customers and managing them for you, reseller hosting might be the better fit than just dumping them all into one hosting plan. So essentially you get a WHM CS license that lets you sell off space from your server to your clients. So you get a turnkey type of website with WHMCS where customers can buy specific plans that you have set. So if you want to make an economy plan, have, I don't know, a gigabyte worth of storage and whatever other statistics that you want for that plan, you can absolutely do so and set your monthly price. And that way they go sign up or you sign up for them. They get their own cPanel account, but you're still managing the hosting overall. You will be their hosting provider. So if they need any type of help, it's on you to fix. So if you're not technical in nature, or if you don't have the time to set up all the details that are needed within WHMCS, this might not be the best option, but it does give you a lot of control if you want to essentially dictate what profit you get off of hosting your clients' websites. And then moving on, we have our VPS and dedicated server. So this is going to be our most powerful offerings available. So both of our VPS and dedicated servers come in a Linux and Windows-based environment. So you can kind of pick and choose whatever makes sense. You also have the option of, with our Linux environment, of choosing no control panel if you want WHM, or if you want Plesk. Those are all available to you. So a great option. If you're going to be hosting your clients' websites, you can set up individual cPanel accounts for them to manage. You can add your own WHMCS license if you want to do so, to be able to sell off. But that server is yours to do whatever you want. I like to think of the different types of hosting, whether it's shared hosting, a VPS, and a dedicated server, as kind of like a house analogy. So with our shared hosting plans, it's kind of like being in an apartment. So if anything were to go wrong, you contact the apartment complex, they come in and fix it. So you just manage the stuff inside. You got your couch, your bed, all that good stuff. With a VPS, it's kind of like a condo. You own that condo. So if anything were to go wrong, like your AC is busted, that's on you to fix. But you still share walls with neighbors, so it's not all yours, but mostly yours. And the dedicated server, it's like owning a house. That is all yours. You don't have neighbors sharing the same walls. You can knock down walls. You can do whatever you want to that server because it is all yours. It's the same thing with the dedicated server. So dedicated is really for those enterprise level websites, or if you're managing a ton of websites for your clients. That's the kind of power you need. But most designers that I see get set up on the server route usually start at the VPS, because you can easily send up and scale down. But you can easily scale up and send down there. So if you want to start at a lower plan, you can absolutely do that to kind of get started. And as you grow, it does grow with you, which is a great option when it comes to VPS. If you want to have that power, or if you're just more technical in nature and kind of like to geek out to some of the server administration stuff like I do, learning some basic SSH commands and things like that, that's also a fun little weekend project as well. But you definitely want to avoid this if you're not super technical in nature. Maybe you're just a website designer and you don't like to deal with all the tech stuff, or if you don't have time to learn. There's a lot of responsibility that goes into managing a server. So take that advice as it will. If you've got that time, got that technical nature, it might be the right fit for you. But if not, I would absolutely avoid it and go with one of the other options that we covered here today. So looking over the spectrum again, we have the easiest of the easy at the bottom with Websites + Marketing. We market it as build a website in under an hour, because essentially you can do that. It's a website builder type of program. I kind of think of it as Lego blocks. So you got your different sections, you build your Legos out and style it however you need to. With the baked in features, we have everything from our basic tiers up to our e-commerce online store. But our managed WordPress is a bit more complex. There's lots of added value with the backups, the staging, the automatic migrations, and things like that. We've got everything from our basic plans up to our Pro 50 if you're going to be hosting clients for your site. Shared hosting, so the cPanel and Plesk, the Swiss Army knives to do whatever you want to do there. Business hosting, having the power of a server without actually having to manage a server. And then the VPS and dedicated server being the ultimate high performance, high flexibility environments, but without high tech required. So those are the different hosting options when it comes to what we have available. Like I was saying in the beginning of this webinar, there are a lot of options. Sometimes there's a lot of choices that make sense for your project. Like, yes, it can fit on managed WordPress, and it can fit on cPanel, and it can fit on business hosting. what makes sense for me. I like to think of when I hand off to the client, how easy it is for them to be managed if our relationship ever ends. Are they going to be stuck and have to call for support for each and everything, or are they going to be able to manage, for the most part, the basics? Anything more complex that they'll need obviously help with from there. Me personally, again, I host my client sites in their account. I try to get them set up with the managed WordPress just to have those automatic updates. I'll connect with my GoDaddy Pro and I get those maintenance contracts from there. But then all the basic stuff is managed for them, like the backups, the caching, the CDN. So their sites are protected and it's less that I have to deal with. And I can focus more on what I love to do, which is the actual design of the website. And with that, those are our hosting solutions available for you. I'd love to answer a couple of your questions. If you have specific questions and use cases with what you're trying to do, I'd love to help kind of point you in the right direction.
Okay, so actually, I would like to mention something. A lot of the messages that we had going back and forth in the chat were set to all panelists, which would not necessarily include attendees. So people who are attending might have missed a couple things. Chorba, would you like to reshare some of the links that you shared before just to make sure that they get those? Otherwise, you really didn't miss much. We did have one participant who is actually, he's making his own website. So he's not selling websites to clients, he is building his own. And so he was not maybe quite sure that this webinar was for him. So I wanted to see if, like, what's your advice if you're building your own website? Where would be the first place you start when you look for hosting?
Yeah, I think it comes down to what type of website will you be building? Is it a WordPress site? Like, what is the application that you're going to be using? And then kind of go from there. When it comes to WordPress, if it's just a WordPress site, and I'm not going to want to manage a lot after the fact, I'll typically stick with managed WordPress because the less I have to do, the better. I don't know, I'm lazy. But if I'm needing something where I need to manage almost every aspect of the environment, I'd go with the cPanel route or even the server route at that point. But for the most part, managed WordPress is my go-to.
Yeah, he was definitely connected to managed WordPress, or sorry, to WordPress. So you would say managed WordPress is probably the best bet for like single site build on WordPress.
Yep, absolutely. You have the automatic updates. So you have to do the core updates with the next version of WordPress 5.5. The automatic plugin and theme updates will come into play. So that way it'll be kind of hands off as far as the updates go. You have your backups up to 90 days. In the event that anything were to happen, you can just click a button to restore. You have staging. So if you want to keep your live site as is and kind of go ham and mess around with it and play with it and see what you can do, you can do that on the staging site without actually impacting what visitors see.
Absolutely. I actually use managed WordPress myself, and one of my favorite features is that backup. It has saved my life more than once, I can only tell you, because I do not always remember to manually back things up before I start making a whole bunch of changes, because I'll usually go into my website and I'll be like, oh, I'm just going to like change a title here, add an image there, and it turns into what is essentially an entire redesign.
Right. You got to start from scratch.
Yeah, it never fails that I will mess something up. And I'm like, all right, you know what? I just need to go back and restore, which I can do with managed WordPress because it does that for me daily automatically. So it's one of my favorite features of that product. It's just definitely been my go-to. I like how you mentioned websites plus marketing there at the beginning. I think a lot of people I think sometimes people can be a little bit elitist when it comes to web design and development, and that, you know, some people feel like, you know, I'm not really a designer if I'm using a website builder, am I? But I would argue that you are, because the design isn't about the tool you're using, it's about the value you're providing. You know, obviously, if you know how, how to make an effective call to action, you know, how to use correct information architecture and hierarchy on a page and things like that. That's really the value you're bringing in as a designer. It doesn't necessarily matter which tool you're using. The tool should suit the need of the website, not necessarily this, you know, used every single skill of the designer. So
I honestly could not say that better.
Yeah, I was just really happy because I didn't see your content beforehand, so I didn't know that you were going to actually touch on that. I kind of was thinking that you were going to go through more of like the self-hosting products like the managed WordPress and, you know, shared Linux and different things like that. So when you brought that out, I was like, yeah.
Yeah.
I was pretty
Yeah.
excited about that.
Yeah, you're right. Like we like I'm all for WordPress, and that's usually where my head goes first. But sometimes the clients that just need something quick and easy to manage or don't have a giant budget and just need something up and fast. It's gonna be a lot easier for me to get them set up with the website's marketing site and get the basic foundations going, and then just hand it off from there. It's definitely saved getting a couple of jobs that didn't really take me a ton of time, but I still got paid for them. In the longer run.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't have any questions or anything else that I would like to talk about. And I didn't see any pop up into chat, even though we did have that, we had that small issue with things getting sent to the panelists rather than the audience. So, you know, in spite of that, we don't really have any questions that we need to hit on. Is there anything else you would like to share?
No, not necessarily. Again, there's really no wrong answer for the most part when it comes to choosing the hosting. Always think about what's going to be easiest for your client in the long run, because that's who we're serving. Like they're the hero of our story. We're doing the service for them, and putting them something that's going to be complicated for them in the long run, it doesn't create a great client experience.
Absolutely. Quick question before I wrap up. Which hosting product do you use for your own website?
Manage WordPress. Again, I'm lazy. If the less I have to do, the better.
You might have mentioned that before, but I don't think I caught it when you did. All right.
Yep.
Well, thanks for joining us. And this was a really fun time. I'm glad that we got a chance to go over all of the different hosting products because there can be a lot out there and it's hard when you're looking at it and you're going through all of the options there. It's hard to choose which one would be best for you. So I think you shared a lot of really great information. Next week, we are going to be diving more into e-commerce again. I think you managed WooCommerce briefly, Nealey?
Yep.
Yep. We're going to be talking a lot more about that and the customer journey and different opportunities you'll have along the way to gain new customers and build loyalty with existing customers. And we're going to be having Ronald with Yith here to talk to us about that. So please tune in next week. Again, you can follow us on the GoDaddy Pro Twitter handle to get notifications about that if you're interested. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.